Hey everybody, welcome back to Motion UX. Today we're going to focus on how do we export our motion from After Effects and how do we actually set it up to be the best preview for our stakeholders, other designers, just to make sure that people understand the motion through and through. Let's dive in. Here we are inside of After Effects and we have this very simple menu interaction right here. And I want to show this to another designer for some feedback. So how exactly is the best way for us to go about exporting this thing and setting ourselves up for success so that when we actually go to present it, it's very clear what is going on. And I'm not talking here about motion specs where we're going to hand this off to a developer. This is really before that step where we're really just wanting to show people, hey, this is the concept that we have, but we want to make sure that they understand it. And one great thing to keep in mind is as we are working on motion, we have seen this animation so many times again and again and again. And to us, since we've seen it so much, we're a lot more familiar with it. And so when we see this being previewed in real time, we can see all the intricacies that are going on. But for someone seeing it for the very first time, it looks very fast. And they may not actually understand all of the intricacies of what's going on there. They're previewing it at full speed, and so they're really getting like the full experience of like, if I were to actually tap on that menu, this is what it would look like. But it's helpful to explain to other designers or other product owners what is actually happening here and why is that valuable for this moment in the experience. One thing that I also wanted to note about this is you can see that I have a little cursor indicator here showing where the user will tap to trigger this interaction. If I go ahead and hide that cursor, you still get a decent preview of what it's going to look like, but you really miss out on some of that context of where did I actually tap in order to make that happen? Did I tap make your picks? Did I tap profile? And so adding in that tap indicator really helps clarify what is the interaction and what is happening here. And if I just solo that layer, you can see it's a super simple just circle that I'm applying a slight scale effect and an opacity effect to it, so that we're able to see it fade in, a little tap, and then it goes away. Very, very simple, but it really does the job of communicating fully what is the interaction in this context. So to help clarify that, it's really helpful just to slow down the motion when we're actually previewing it. So let me walk through what that would look like here. So the first thing we want to do is go ahead and trim our composition to our work area. And then let's go ahead and take this composition that we have our animation in and create a new composition from it. And let's actually name this interaction half speed. But now if we right click on this and enable the column stretch, now we have the option to actually stretch the timing of this clip. And so if I go ahead and I do it for 286 and I preview that, you can see everything is significantly slower. But you'll also see that it cuts off because our composition inside of here expands beyond the bounds of this current composition. So if we go ahead and go to settings and we just change the duration to just something a little bit longer, like 10 seconds, we can then zoom out and we can see our full composition here. And now if we go ahead and preview it, it'll take a little bit of time to render those frames because it is applying a stretch type of effect to it. And so now we have a composition here that shows it in a third of the speed, and then we have one here that shows it in real time. And it's helpful still to show what does it look like in real time and what does it look like slowed down. When we preview it, the people viewing it can really appreciate all the intricacies of what is going on. So at this point, there are a few different ways that we could take this. You could just immediately trim this comp, make a GIF or export a video and just share that around. You could do the same with the original speed one. Or we can actually combine that into one video so it's just a little bit easier to have a packaged thing to share around. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new composition and we're going to choose just a 1080p HD resolution, make sure it's at 60 frames per second, set the duration to something a little bit longer like 40 seconds. We'll name this interaction preview. Make sure that we have a solid background. I'm just going to do like a black background here. And let's go ahead and pull in our real time and then we'll pull in our half speed. And we can see how long those are taking. Let's make sure that we set the scale so that it fits within the bounds of what we're showing here. How I'll set this up is I'll show real time and then I'll show the half speed so that when we're previewing it, everyone sees it as it's meant to be seen. And then we get like a second look where we kind of see like what's the magic behind this interaction. So we'll go ahead and we'll sequence it just like this. This is one way that we could do it. We could stop here, export this video, or export it as a GIF, and it would be good enough. If we go ahead and preview this, you see we see it in real time, and then we see it with the half speed applied. And so we're able to see things a little bit easier. And as it is right now, we could go ahead and we can export this, and that would be fine. But sometimes it's helpful to have a little bit of context just embedded in this preview so that when people are seeing it and don't know the context, it helps a little bit. That could be just as simple as just adding a text layer here. And so here we could just say, make sure we're at white text. We just say something like real time. And then we duplicate that and we say half speed. Trim this text layer to be visible when the real time is on, and then trim the other one for when the other one is on. And so once that is done, we can go ahead and we can trim it at a good spot. Hit N to set the work area, right click and trim comp to work area. And so you can see this is not a very complex process, but having this one cohesive artifact to share around makes it a little bit easier for whoever's previewing it to understand what is happening, why it's magical, kind of like how is the magic happening in the background. And it just overall increases your chances of successful communication when trying to share a motion concept. So now how do we actually export this video from After Effects into an actual shareable artifact? And so my preferred route is using GIFGun. Usually I'm sharing things around in Slack or sending a text message, and that's a really just like easy and shareable format. If you're wanting it to be a little bit higher quality, we can also go to the video route. To do that, I typically use Adobe Media Encoder. And sometimes Adobe Media Encoder can be a little bit buggy and finicky, and so the easiest way I've found to just export things is make sure that you can see both windows at the same time and just drag your composition that you're wanting to export, which is not that one, it's this one, the interaction preview. Just drag it all the way over to the queue and you drop it. And then you should see that composition in here. And typically I just go for the YouTube HD preset because that is like a really low file size, easy to share. And it typically just like generates really good results every single time. And if you've never used Adobe Media Encoder, the dynamic link connection can sometimes take a long time. So just wait and be patient. And hopefully it will eventually connect. Make sure that you're actually having the same version of After Effects and Adobe Media Encoder, because when you have different versions, they sometimes just end up getting a little bit buggy. So you can see here we have a preview of what our composition looks like. We don't need to really export any audio because there's nothing there, so you can go ahead and deselect that. Everything else you more or less leave the same. It's already set to 60 frames per second, so that's what we want. And if for some reason you're just wanting as small of a file size as possible, you can see that it estimates the file size here below. You can just change the target and maximum bit rate. And this will drastically change the file size, but it will also impact the quality of the video. So if you're just really needing something real tiny to put into like a slide deck, sometimes just reducing the video size is sometimes helpful just for optimizing that preview experience. You can also change the output name here, but once everything looks good, and if you've made some like specific customizations specifically for something that you'll reuse again and again and again, I definitely recommend saving a preset. And if for some reason you mess up some of the settings, you can just go back to these presets and go all the way down here to YouTube Full HD. Once that's done, you hit OK, and you just hit this play button up here, and it will render out the entire video. And what's great about rendering out videos with Adobe Media Encoder is that while this is happening, you can actually go back into After Effects and continue working and animating other stuff. When you use the After Effects render queue, everything is just kind of on pause until that whole rendering process is complete. And when I've used the After Effects render queue, it doesn't give me enough customization to get it to get to a very compressed, high quality file. And so that's why I always go to Adobe Media Encoder, because it seems to do a really good job with that. When Adobe Media Encoder is done, you'll get a great video file to preview. And so it shows real time, then it shows half speed. An artifact like this to share around with stakeholders, with other designers, is super helpful in being able to communicate what is happening in this specific interaction. Because as you can see, this is a very like slick, very quick responsive interaction, which is what we want. But we also want to know, like, okay, how is it actually being made? What is actually moving around, and all of those different aspects. And so slowing it down during a preview is a super simple and really powerful way to communicate that. Considering how you are going to export your motion for preview can really help add an extra level of context and clarity when other designers or stakeholders or business partners are previewing the concept that you've spent a lot of time crafting. So definitely try it out on your next project, and I'll catch you all next time.